So I was sent a video that was made by ITM Trading. If you don't know who ITM Trading is, they're basically a gold company that really has a lot of conversations, is worried about the devaluation of the dollar, loss of the world's reserve currency, hyperinflation, all these things that are pretty common in the gold world. A lot of things that are common, I guess, just in alternative investments at all right now, but they are in that space. Now, these guys had some things to say about whole life insurance. And I had this video shared with me. It's like a 4-minute clip, 3-4 minute clip. And the things that they said, honestly, like I love, just full transparency. I love ITM Trading. I love a lot of their content. I love what they stand for. Lynette is fantastic. So I have nothing bad to say, but some of the things that they said about whole life insurance just were not accurate. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and break this video down and kind of share my 2 senses on what they had to say about whole life insurance. So without further ado, what I'm going to do, put my headphones on, I'm going to share my screen, and we will go from there. So here we go. Let me play the video.
Still awake.
All right, Pamela H asks, and we get actually whole life questions. We get this a lot.
Okay.
So will whole life insurance policies that can be borrowed against potentially be negatively impacted or wiped out in this upcoming financial reset?
How many words do you want me to use? 1?
You can use
yes. Yes.
Okay.
I know a lot of people do whole life policies because they kind of view it as a way to save.
Yep. So first of all, good job, Lynette. Whole life should never be looked at as an investment. It is a savings alternative, and so that's a good start. And so let's see where they go with this.
Right. It's not the most cost-effective way to do it.
Right.
Really.
The insurance fees are high.
Very high.
But you do get.
So saying that whole life insurance isn't the most cost-effective way to save, I think it's a function of what are we doing? Are we saving money or are we investing? Saving in a whole life policy is going to be infinitely more effective than saving in a bank from a long-term perspective. So we always have to look. I think the word saving gets thrown around a lot when people are talking about investing. They're talking about a lot of people utilize the phrase, I'm going to save for retirement. No, you're not. You're investing for retirement. So there's a different function of saving and investing. And I think having safe money, liquid access to capital, an emergency fund, an opportunity fund, those sorts of things that we talk about for real estate and business, I think, that's a big delineation that you need to understand. It's the difference between saving and investing. And as far as the cost of whole life, if you do it the right way, yes, the whole cost of insurance and the fees inside of whole life insurance can be detrimental to your savings goals from a short-term perspective if you do it improperly. But if you do it right, then I'd show you, and I've done tons of videos, showing how it's like a savings account, but enhanced, because you have a lot of other benefits that go along with it. So, all right, let's keep going.
You do get the death benefit. A lot of people do it for estate planning because they get the death benefit, and they get and you don't get any downside risk to the market, right? You can never lose principal, but you're capped on the upside.
All right, so the way he's describing it right now, saying you don't have any downside, because you're protected against market losses, but you have a cap on the upside. He's actually not even describing whole life insurance here. He's describing index universal life insurance, in which, by the way, I would steer clear of if I were you. I wouldn't touch IUL with a 1,000-foot pole, especially if you're utilizing it for savings alternatives, because IUL, index universal life, doesn't have the same risk profile that whole life insurance has. So that's first and foremost. And then, on the other side of it, though, I would say whole life insurance is basically a bond alternative. It's like a bond alternative that's going to outperform bonds after year 10. And it's going to have savings account like liquidity in the early years and in the later years. So imagine a bond like alternative that has savings like liquidity. That's with ancillary benefits like death benefit that he said. He's talking about using it for estate planning, which is a great way to go. But whole life insurance, when done properly, is a great savings alternative out of the gate. It's a great estate planning thing from a legacy play because it's tax-free death benefit. You have living benefits that can help with alternative medical treatments in retirement. That's a pretty phenomenal way. It's a volatility buffer in retirement as well that you can utilize to enhance the performance of your other investments, because you cannot lose money in a whole life policy, guaranteed to grow every single year. Even in last year, where the 60-40 portfolios kind of blew up because of the fact that bonds and the market both lost for the first time ever, right? And so whole life insurance still performed well, right? Like, so when we think about that, it's pretty powerful stuff. So, all right, let's keep going. I know that they're going to get into here. I know where they're going with this. And I guess I want to prep it so I don't have to stop it. I'm just going to let it go, is when it happens inevitably. Where they're going to go with this is they're basically going to say, well, whole life insurance is tied to the dollar, right? And so if it's tied to the dollar, well, then you got to stay away from it, because you don't want any money tied to a currency that is going to get hyperinflated away, because that's kind of where these conversations always go. So let's see what happens.
Right. So you might only be able to get 15% on your investment, but if the market does 20 or 30, the insurance company keeps the rest.
And here's what I would say about that. Even in an IUL, if you have a cap at 15% and the market did 30, the insurance company doesn't keep the extra 15%. That's not how it works at all. I've got a lot of videos explaining how it does it. Once again, I agree with him. IULs are not good products, and they're but they're not good for different reasons. How he just described how IUL even works isn't accurate. So I just want to be clear about that.
So that's why people do that, in case you don't know.
Right. But the answer in a nutshell is yes. And keep in mind too, that people think that all things are, oh, well, they said it's guaranteed. Well, if you read the fine print, it says based on the claims paying ability of the insurance company.
Yeah. Well, and even if it is guaranteed, let's say they do everything that they said they're going to do. If it gets to a reset, it's hyperinflation first.
Right.
So it'll be super easy for them to meet their obligations, because the dollar won't be worth anything. So if your policy is worth $10 million, but a loaf of bread costs $5 million, here's your $10 million.
So here's the deal. When we look at this, first of all, once again, IULs are not going to have good guarantees. Whole life insurance companies with participating mutually held whole life insurance companies are as guaranteed a product as you can find. We've had over 5 bank failures this year in 2023 alone. Since 1842, there's only been one participating mutually held company that's failed. And so the financial stability of a whole life insurance company is one of the greatest assets. You're not giving your money to a whole life policy, whole life company to try to get massive returns. You're doing it to manage your risk. And so what they're talking about with inflation and hyperinflationary environments, and you get $10 million as used, which would be a huge policy, right? If you had $10 million in a whole life policy, he's saying, well, who cares if hyperinflation happens? They could just like inflate that money away, and you're still tied to the dollar, which is kind of where I thought they were going to go with this. But check this out. Like, so one of the things, and you know what, before going into what I want to go into, I'm going to actually play this out, and then I'm going to give the rest of my response. I'm going to play the next minute 36, I think is left on this, because I just want to be able to be really succinct with where I'm going with this. So on why I think whole life insurance companies actually are great alternatives to keeping your money in a fiat currency, because let's face it, we have to deal with money. We have to deal with currency and trading. We have to live our life. And I'm a big believer we need to be prepared for if they're right and hyperinflation happens. We need to be prepared for if people like Harry Dent are right and we have a deflationary problem, right? Like, there's a lot of people with a lot of varying opinions. And the question is, are you putting yourself in a position where you at least have some money in a bucket that one way or the other, you have a hedge on both sides of it? And that's what I'm going to cover. So let's watch the rest of this, and then I will give a little bit of feedback and education on how whole life insurance actually does work and why I have so much confidence in it for the scenarios that they're actually saying it doesn't work. So here we go.
Whoop-de-doo. So yeah, it absolutely can be wiped out. Hyperinflation will wipe out
any fiat money, assets or instruments. Absolutely, 100%.
But if you have enough gold and silver in your portfolio to offset those losses, that's the goal. That's the whole point of owning gold and silver. You're not buying it for investment. You're buying it as an insurance policy so that you can have your assets in these other things and cover yourself.
And just I know I said I love gold. I love silver. And exactly what he said is what I always tell people. It is not an investment. It is an insurance policy against the devaluation of the US dollar. That's what it is. And so from that perspective, fantastic. Love that. And let's go.
Now, the fact of the matter is that gold and silver are severely undervalued. So that creates opportunity as we're going through this reset. And as the gold and silver, the nominal value starts to go toward its fundamental value, which is much higher than where it's trading now.
Well, even if, let's say, let's say it was at its fundamental value now, let's say 12,500 an ounce, right? Even if it wasn't undervalued like it is, right? Fundamental value 12,500, right now it's around 1,900, undervalued. But even if it was at 12,500, in a hyperinflationary reset scenario, you're talking about gold that could be 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, a million.
5 trillion, right?
So there's a thing with gold, there's a thing with crypto, and it's one of the reasons I think everybody should have a small percentage of their net worth, their future in gold, in crypto, is in any of those, is because, listen, these guys are obviously huge on gold and silver. I know other people that are huge on crypto. I like both of them. And I think, once again, they are not investment alternatives. If part of a bigger financial plan and structure, they play a role, and you can get what's called asymmetric returns, meaning if we do really truly run into this hyperinflationary environment, what will happen is we will have, like gold, like they said, it will go from 2,000 to maybe 100,000 or $200,000 a coin, right? Because that's what will happen with hyperinflation. All fixed hard assets will go up in value because hyperinflation, that's what it does to this environment. And that's what gold is. That's what crypto is, a limited kind of supply currency kind of deal, right? It's a controlled supply. And so what we have here is this concept of asymmetric return. So if you had 1% in your portfolio in gold and the rest of your portfolio got inflated away with hyperinflation, but that gold went up 100 times in value to 200,000 from 2,000, well, now that at least keeps your whole portfolio insulated and insured against hyperinflationary risk. And that's what they're talking about. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that. But and you could do that with crypto, you could do that with gold. Real estate is also protected in that way if you own real estate, because that physical hard, but you got to own it, right? And I would say if you have fixed debt on real estate, that's also a really powerful thing, right? Because having just the debt gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper on those fixed assets. And so pretty solid stuff. So let's keep going here. And
just like in Germany, hyperinflation was 87 trillion Deutschmarks for 1 ounce of gold. It started at 170 Deutschmarks, and in 4 years it was 87 trillion for 1 Deutschmark. So even if it wasn't undervalued, gold retains its value during that period of time, goes up dramatically while fiat money evaporates and real assets plummet in value. And so the opportunity is to take that $87 trillion and then buy undervalued assets, so that when you come out of the reset, you're on the better side of it.
You're learning so well.
That's right. I listen, digest, take it in.
Love it. Love it.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so that is that video. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually I want to do what I was talking about, and I want to share. I'm going to share my board here. I'm going to go over and work on my whiteboard and spend a little time really just educating on how this works. So let me talk about why I love whole life insurance. Is because if you know your history, whole life insurance started in the 1840s, in the early 1840s, and this is when mutual companies began. So think about this. Everybody's worried about hyperinflation. Well, I don't know if you know this, but if you go back to the 1840s, like let's just do a little history. 1861, anybody know what happened there? The Civil War. And so since 1840, when these companies have happened, mutual companies have been, even during the Civil War, have paid a dividend every single year, right? They've paid a dividend every single year, even in the Civil War. So I don't care how bad hyperinflation gets or not, they paid a dividend, they manage the risk. Remember, what is the purpose of the life insurance company? I can take my money and I can say, all right, I've got whatever amount of fiat currency I have. Let's just use a $10,000 number. I could take this $10,000 of fiat currency that I have in my life, and I could try to manage that risk on it on my own and say, I'm going to go buy gold with that because I'm extreme and that's what I want to do. Or I can realize, but hold on, but there's an opportunity cost of gold, because yes, I'm buying it as insurance, but when I buy that gold as insurance, I am losing control of that money, meaning it's just sitting there. I can't utilize it. If anything in the market changes, if gold goes down in value, which listen, it did back in 2008, right? It went down in value. If we hit a recession, or we have any kind of contraction in the economy, the chances are gold is actually going to go down, because there's a lot of indications right now showing that everything that's going on in the world is actually, at least on the short-term basis, is positive for the US dollar, not negative. Now, I am with these guys. I am in full agreement that the idea of gold is awesome from a long-term perspective, at least on a certain level, because of the fact that we are going to have a challenge as a world's reserve currency from a long-term perspective. And I think that will cause problems for us, and we'll lose our ability to finance our debt and finance our bad financial problems to the rest of the world. And they've been basically taking it on for us. But here's the deal. When we look at this, the whole purpose is, rather than me manage my debt and me manage my risk and me manage what's going to happen when the dollar loses its world's reserve currency status, and if and when that all happens, I am giving this to the insurance company, to these mutually held life insurance companies. And I'm saying, hey, listen, you've been doing this since 1840. You were successful in the Civil War. There's been 3 versions of the US dollar since whole life insurance companies came into play. Now, once again, I'm not trying to talk you into not going and getting some gold outside of everything. I'm simply saying you also need to have some money with whole life insurance companies. Take the money that you know you need to use for fiat, that you maybe want to get deployed in business, and you want to deploy in real estate, you want to have for an emergency fund, you need to live, you need to think about things like this. Take that money and put it with a whole life insurance company, because they have managed 3 different versions of the US dollar since 1840s. Because remember, in the Civil War, the currency that we had in the 1840s went away. We had a new currency then. We had a new currency in the mid 1870s. And then with 1913, with the creation of the Federal Reserve, we went on to the dollar that we know today. And I could even argue that there's been more than that, because the Bretton Woods Act impacted with the gold standard. Even though we didn't change currencies, that was a pretty big impact. People were talking a lot about that. And then in 1971, when Richard Nixon removed us from the gold standard, that kind of led to these problems. We could argue that that was another version of the dollar, and that's led to this inflation, which I would say, it's taken a while for that to happen, but here we are, right? And so at the end of the day, my goal for an insurance company is to manage my risk. And the one thing that these guys got wrong is that life insurance companies are all fiat money. Let me show you how life insurance companies work. There's a pie. Out of this pie, this 75% over here is bonds. This can be corporate bonds, corporate, muni, treasury, can be mortgage-backed securities. It's 75% is roughly that. And then this other 25%, they've got a little wiggle room, right? Over here, they've got other assets. They can have gold. They can have crypto. They can have real estate. They can have other alternative type assets over in this 25%. But no different than what I'm talking about for you with your safe money. What you're talking about is when you put your money in a whole life policy, you're giving it to them to manage your risk of that safe money. And just like they're talking about right there, you should have a small percentage of your money in gold as an insurance against the devaluation of the dollar. When you put your money in a whole life policy, you are basically saying, I'm putting my fiat money inside of this whole life policy, and I'm allowing the life insurance company to manage my risk. Because let's face it, as we lose the world's reserve currency, WRC, what are the risks? What are the risks? Devaluation of the dollar, right? And if the devaluation of the USD happens, well, then what are the potential outcomes? Maybe some kind of crypto currency. Well, when it becomes time, do you think you're going to be capable and smart enough to get ahead of this? Maybe you are. I don't think I'm going to be smarter than a company that's managing billions and billions and billions of dollars. Not only that, I would say, if you look back, here's the deal: 80% of all whole life is owned by banks and corporations. So when you think about this, I want my money where these guys are, because these are the guys that are going to be protected. They have their money in whole life insurance. And so what the thing is like, you could go get crypto, you could go get gold, you could do silver. But what happens is these are all risks. Yes, they're insurance. You could do 1%, 1%, 1% if you want. But what happens is you tie this up and you can't use it. By putting it into a whole life policy, you have the liquidity, you can utilize it, and you never interrupt the growth of that. You allow them to say, hey, I'm going to take this 25% here, and they're going to manage that risk. They're going to invest in these other alternatives and try to get that asymmetric risk to protect the portfolio the same way they've been doing since 1840 right here, right? So when we look at this and you understand how it really works, how a life insurance company actually functions, you start to realize that there's so many more layers to it. So anyway, I hope that helps. Guys, I love you. I love the ITM people. I think your mission is amazing. I think you're trying to educate people, but when it comes to your level of whole life insurance understanding, you got that one a little wrong. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Lynette, I know you live in Arizona. I live in Chandler. We've talked before about possibly getting together and doing a video. I would love to get on and do a video with you, and have a conversation about whole life insurance and actually educate your people and your community about how this actually works. Because at the end of the day, I think whole life insurance, when it's done right, and gold, when it's done right together, and understanding how they can kind of play with each other and how to build a portfolio that protects people from all of the different risks that are going on in the world without being super extreme, it'll open it up to a lot of people that we're not currently able to connect with. So anyway, hopefully everybody found value in that. Hopefully it gives some clarity to how whole life insurance actually works. And if you are contemplating getting gold, I'm not trying to talk you out of doing the gold. I'm just trying to say, like, you got to understand how these assets work before making a decision. And I just was not comfortable having that description of how whole life insurance worked out there. So I had to kind of give some correction. So anyway, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon. See ya.